All right, this week we're gonna finish the chapter 3. So next week we will have the chapter test for chapter 3. Okay, so let's move on to 3.3. The first objective is how to identify intercepts. So first let's check a graph. If we have this kind of graph, and we have kind of like this line, this straight line. If we have this straight line, let's say if this is called the straight line, y is equal to 4x minus 8, we can find that we have two special points. One is the straight line crosses the x-axis. So this point is the line crosses the x. So if we have this one, we know if we say a is the number, is the value for x-axis. Of course, we find that this point is right on the x-axis, which means the value for y is 0. And we have another special point. This is the point, the line crosses the y-axis, and we will realize the value for the x is 0, and the value for the y is called b. Then this point, we call it X-intercept. And this kind of point, we call it y-intercept. This point. Then we realize for any x-intercept, we could have a value a0. So for any x-intercept, the y is always equal to 0. The y value is always equal to 0, right? And similarly, for any y-intercept, the value for x is always 0. And we have another value, b is for y. So this is just the definition of intercept. We can have x-intercept and y-intercept. So if we are given a straight line, we should know how to find what's the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So let's check some examples. For example, this is the graph. If we have the graph, right? And we have the line like that. And we know the value here is 1, 2. And here is -1, -2, -3, let's say. How can we find the x-intercept and the y-intercept? First, we know x-intercept is the point on the x-axis. So which one is the x-intercept here? Obviously, this point is the x-intercept. Then we only need to find the paired value for this point. We know x-intercept, we can find the x value because we already know the y value should have to be 0, right? Because it's on the x-axis. Then we realize the x value here should be -3. This is called x-intercept. If the point is on x-axis, here, this point on x-axis, so it's x-intercept. If the point is on y-axis, So it's called y-intercept. And we only need to find the value for y because we already know the x should be equal to 0. So the value for y is 2. So we know this point is the y-intercept. Again, x-intercept, that point, it's a point, right? Is always on x-axis. And the y-intercept, another point, is always on the y-axis. And for x-intercept, the y value automatically equals 0. So we only need to figure out what's the value for x. Similarly, for y-intercept, the x value always equal to 0. We only need to figure out what's the y value. So let's check another example. For example, this time we have another line. And this line is kind of special. It's it goes through the origins. Now we want to know what's the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So by the definition, what is the x-intercept? The x-intercept, we set the y value equal to 0. Y value should be equal to 0. But if we realize the y value is equal to 0, in this case, the x value is also equal to 0. That's the origins, right? So for this kind of a problem, we know both x-intercept and y-intercept are the same point, 0.0. So we know the x-intercept should on the x-axis. So this point is on x-axis. And the y value is equal to 0. That's correct. And this point is also the y-intercept because x equal to 0. And this point is also on the y-axis. So in this case, x-intercept and y-intercept are the same point. It's just the 0, 0. It's the origin. So sometimes the curve is the picture does not show the straight line. Maybe it's just the curve. It's just a curve, right? We can still find the intercept. Let's say if this -1, -2, -3, and this point is -4. For this question, we could find the intercepts. Let's check by the definition. X-intercepts should on the x-axis. Then we realize there are 2 points on the x-axis. So which means we will have 2 x-intercepts for this one. So let's find this one first, the left intercepts here. So the x-intercepts should be the first one is -4, 0. And we will have another one, right? This point, let's say it's -1, 0. So we have 2 x-intercepts. 2 x-intercepts. And let's check the y-intercept. So we find we only have 1 point crosses the y-axis. So here, we know for any y-intercepts, x value is always equal to 0. And we only need to figure out what's the y value, right? So it's not necessary to be the straight line. We could find the x-intercept, y-intercept. For the curve, we still can find the intercepts because we only need to check the definition. Again, for any x-intercepts, y value is equal to 0. And for any y-intercept, x value is equal to 0. So this is the first objective. So second objective, we need to find the intercepts and try to plot the intercept. So basically, we only need to use this rule to find the intercepts. Because by the definition, we already know for any x-intercepts, we know by the definition it should be a0, right? Which means y is always to 0. So if we want to find the x-intercept, we just let y equal to 0. Then solve for x. Similarly, y-intercept, we know it should be 0b, which means the x is always equal to 0. So we just set x equal to 0, then solve for y. We only need to figure out what's the y value, because for y-intercept, we know x automatically to be 0. So let's check. This is the rule, okay? X-intercept, y equal to 0. Again, y-intercept, x equal to 0. Let's check an example. So we have this equation, x minus 3y equals 6. X minus 3y equals 6. And we want to find and plot the intercepts for this equation. So from here, we get the x-intercept first. Remember, if we want to get x-intercept, we set y equal to 0. So we set y equal to 0. Then we use 0 to replace the y in the equation. So the equation will be like x 3 times 0, right? Equals 6. So x automatically equals 6. Then we can find the ordered pair for x-intercept. So we know it will be 6, 0. Now we check the y-intercept. Similarly, this time, because we want to find the y value, we just set x equal to 0. Then we use 0 to replace the x in the equation. We will have 0 minus 3y equals 6. Then we will solve for y. We get it's negative 2. Then we get the y-intercept value. Of course, x equal to 0. Y is negative 2. So we can use this one to help us, this 2 to help us draw the graph if needed. So we have x 6, 0. So it will be 2, 4, 6. We know 6, 0. So we plot this one. This is the x-intercept, and we know it's 0, -2. So if it's 2, -4. So we will find this y-intercept, 0, -2, and then we can use these 2 points to draw the curve. Oh, sorry, it's 6. Go back. So the x-intercept is not this one. It should be 6, 0. So this is the x-intercept. Do it. This will be the line. We can just use these 2 intercepts to help us draw the straight line. Of course, we can set the third point. You can pick a value for x and then use that value to replace x, then solve for y to find the ordered pair. To then use that point as the third point to test if that curve is correct or not. But if you want, you can just use these 2 intercepts to help you draw the curve, draw the line. Let's see another one. This time, we have this equation. We still need to find and plot the intercepts. So we do the same thing for x-intercept. Remember, we set y equal to 0. So in this case, we will have x equal to -2. We use 0 to replace y. So we will get x equal to 0. So this time, the x-intercept is 0, 0. So next step, we want to find the y-intercept, right? And of course, for any y-intercept, we need to set x is equal to 0. Then the equation will be like 0 equals -2y. We will get the y is also equal to 0. So for the y-intercept, we have the same point. Now we know we could not draw the line by just using 1 point, right? Because it's just 1 point. We cannot determine the line. We can set another one. Let's say the third point, we can say we want to set x equals 1. Then we use 1 to replace the x value. Or let's say maybe x equals 2. Maybe this one is more easy to draw. So x equal to 2. Then we use 2 to replace x. The equation will be like this way. We use 2 to replace x. 2 equals -2y. Then we solve for y. We will get y is equal to -1. So we got the second point. So this 0, 0 is our first point. We got another point. X equals 2, y equals -1. So after that, we could use, if you want, you can set the third point to just make sure we have this one, 0, 0. And we have 1, 2, 1, -1, 1, 2. So we have 2, -1. It will be like this position. So we could connect this 2 point. So the curve look like this way. So we just connect this 2 point to find. And this point is just the random point, we will say, on the curve, or on the line. It's not the intercept, right? This is not the intercept. We only have 1 point for intercept. It's both the x-intercept and the y-intercept, they are the same point, 0, 0. So that's the second objective. We know how to find and plot the intercepts. We just set 0 for x for if we want to solve for y-intercept. If we set y is equal to 0, then we solve for x to get the x-intercept. So the third objective here is about the vertical line and the horizontal line. For these two kind of lines, we can only find one intercept for each. Let's check the vertical line first. So I would say for vertical line, for any vertical line, we could not find y-intercept. Vertical line, no y-intercept. For horizontal line, no x-intercept. We will check it later. So first, we check this example. Try to graph x equal to 2. So how can we graph this one? So in this coordinate, x, y, we have this point. And 1, 2, -1, -2, 1, 2, 3. How can we graph x equal to 2? For this equation, we already know x is a fixed value. It's a fixed value. So no matter what's the value for y, x is always fixed, is always 2. So we can still find some point to help us to draw the. So we know x is always 2, right? So y can be any value, 1, 0, 1, 2, any value we want. So we can use this several points to help us draw the graph. We know x equal to 2, 0, so that will be this point. And we know this one is right on the x-axis, so this one is also our x-intercept. So we know for vertical line, it's possible to get it, sure to get a x-intercept, but no y-intercept. Let's check the second point, 2, 1. So it's still 2, but this time the point will be like this, 2, 1. And the 2, 2, it will be like this one. Of course, if you realize we can find the 2, -1, 2, -2. But the x value is fixed. So if we connect all the 3 points, we will get a vertical line. This vertical line called x equal to 2. So x is a fixed value. Okay, it will be a vertical line. And you see, it's a vertical line. It's parallel to y-axis. So we will never get y-intercept. We cannot find a point crosses the y-axis because it's parallel to the y-axis. That's why we call the no y-intercept, but it's always have an x-intercept. So it will be x equals 2. So the x-intercept will be 2, 0. So this point is the x-intercept. For any vertical line, x is equal to a fixed number. This is the fixed number. It's a real number. C is also a real number. Then we will get the graph for this equation is a vertical line. It's just a vertical line. So if it's a vertical line, we can only have x-intercept only, which means no y-intercept. So we can check another situation. If this time we will have a horizontal line. Let's check this case. This case, we will get a horizontal line. Let's see why. Because this equation is y is equal to a fixed number. We can still list the several values, right? X, y. Then we know y is a fixed number, so we can put all of the y value here. Then we can say we have 1, 0, 1, 2. Let's see what will happen. -3. And 1, 2, 3 for x. So the first point, we get x equal to 3. X equal to 0 and y equal to -3. So it will be right here. X is equal to 0, y equal to -3. And we realized because x is equal to 0, so this is our y-intercept. Y-intercept, right? Then we check the second point. X is equal to 1, y is still -3, so it's right here. And x is equal to 2, y is equal to -3. So y is a fixed number. If we draw 3 points together to find that line, we realize that's a horizontal line, which means it's parallel to the x-axis. That is, we will never get an x-intercept for this kind of horizontal line, because it's parallel to the x-axis. We only have y-intercepts. The y-intercept will be x equal to 0. Then y is that value, because y is always a fixed number in this case. So for any horizontal, for any y is equal to a value. See here is a fixed real number, is a fixed number. We will always get a horizontal line. Horizontal line for this situation. If it's a horizontal line, then we could only have the y-intercept only. Y-intercept only, which means no x-intercept. And what's the number for y-intercept? X equal to 0, so it will be 0c. Similarly, for this case, x-intercept only, we can only have c0, because y is equal to 0 for any x-intercept. So that point will be c0. Again, no y-intercept for horizontal, for vertical line. No x-intercept for for horizontal line, horizontal line parallel to the x-axis, so no x-intercept. So that's for the 3.3.